The story of Nero, the last emperor of the Julio-Claudian dynasty, is one of terror, excess, and madness that continues to haunt the annals of history. His reign, marked by cruelty, betrayal, and scandal, was one that profoundly altered the course of the Roman Empire. But how did a young man, once celebrated for his talents and charm, become the emperor who would plunge Rome into its darkest period? Let's dive into the madness of Nero, a ruler whose actions defy comprehension, but whose influence on history is undeniable. Nero's rise to power is as shocking as the man himself. Born Lucius Domitius Ahenobarbus in 37 AD, he was the son of Agrippina the Younger, the great-granddaughter of Emperor Augustus, and Gnaeus Domitius Ahenobarbus. His family connections were impeccable, yet his childhood was marred by tragedy. Nero's father died when he was just a young boy, and his mother, Agrippina, would go on to marry Emperor Claudius, positioning her son as heir to the throne. The path to the imperial throne was laid out for him, but the cost of this ambition would be more than Nero could have ever imagined. At the age of 16, after the sudden death of Claudius, suspected to have been orchestrated by Agrippina herself, Nero became the emperor of Rome. His early reign, however, was marked by the influence of others. For the first few years, his mother held significant power as regent, and the young emperor was portrayed as a reasonable, even benevolent ruler. His advisors, the philosopher Seneca and the prefect Burrus, steered him towards more moderate policies, helping to secure the empire's stability during these early years. But as Nero grew older, his dependence on his mother weakened, and his true character began to emerge. The first signs of his cruelty came when he ordered the murder of his stepbrother, Britannicus, whom many believed was the rightful heir to the throne. With Britannicus out of the picture, Nero was free to rule without challenge. It was the first of many deaths that would stain his reign. Nero's relationship with his mother, Agrippina, would be one of the most infamous in Roman history. Initially, their bond was strong, but over time, Nero's ambitions and desire for absolute control grew. In a tragic and cruel turn of events, Nero had Agrippina murdered in 59 AD. Accounts vary, but the most popular story suggests that Nero attempted to kill her by setting up a collapsing boat, which failed and ultimately had her killed by his soldiers. His matricide marked the beginning of Nero's descent into madness. It was also during this period that Nero began to indulge in his more extravagant and hedonistic desires. He built the Domus Aurea, a massive palace that stretched across much of the city of Rome, filled with gold, marble, and jewels. The emperor began hosting lavish banquets and entertainment, including chariot races, gladiatorial games, and even theatrical performances where he would act as the star. His desire to be seen as an artist and performer led him to take part in public music competitions and recitals, further alienating him from the Roman aristocracy, who found his actions repulsive. One of the most significant events of Nero's reign occurred in 64 AD, the Great Fire of Rome. The fire ravaged the city for 6 days, leaving large sections in ruins. The public suspicions about Nero's involvement in the fire have persisted for centuries. Some ancient sources claim that Nero started the fire himself, while others suggest that he watched it burn from a distance, playing his lyre and singing the Sac of Ilium, a song about the fall of Troy. Regardless of the truth, Nero was quick to shift the blame onto the Christians, who were already a marginalized group in the empire. The resulting persecution of Christians was brutal, with many being tortured and executed in horrific ways. The fire also gave Nero the opportunity to rebuild Rome in his image, furthering his desire to establish a city worthy of his grandeur. The Domus Aurea, already a symbol of his success, became a focal point in the rebuilding efforts. Nero's ambition to create a city that reflected his personality and vision became one of his most defining features. Yet, his plans were met with criticism from both the Senate and the people, who saw Nero's actions as selfish and disconnected from the needs of the Roman citizens. Nero's political decisions and foreign policies were equally erratic. His relationship with the Senate became increasingly strained as he sought to consolidate power. In 65 AD, a plot to assassinate Nero was uncovered, known as the Pisonian Conspiracy. The conspiracy, led by a group of senators and equestrians, aimed to replace Nero with a more competent ruler. The plot was swiftly crushed, and dozens of conspirators were executed, some in brutal fashion. The execution of so many prominent figures only added to Nero's growing paranoia. By 68 AD, Nero's reign was nearing its end. The discontent within Rome had reached a boiling point, fueled by his extravagant spending, cruelty, and mismanagement of the empire. The military, which had once been loyal to Nero, began to turn against him. In Gaul, a general named Vindex led a rebellion, and in the eastern provinces, governors began to declare their independence from the emperor. As the walls closed in on him, Nero fled Rome in a panic, eventually taking refuge in a villa outside the city. With no escape and surrounded by his enemies, Nero took his own life in June 68 AD, ending the Julio-Claudian dynasty. His death marked the end of an era for Rome, as the empire plunged into a period of civil war known as the Year of the Four Emperors. Nero's legacy was one of terror, excess, and madness, but also of artistic ambition and an undeniable impact on Roman culture. In the aftermath of his death, Nero's memory was damned by the Senate, and his statues were destroyed. Yet, his influence on the empire's culture and politics endured. His reign left a scar on Rome that would take years to heal, and his name would forever be associated with one of the most infamous chapters in Roman history. Nero's death, while marking the end of his reign, left Rome in a state of turmoil that took years to resolve. The empire, already frail due to his erratic rule, had to navigate through the confusion and power struggles that followed. Nero's failure to produce a strong succession plan led to the rapid succession of emperors in what we now call the Year of the Four Emperors. This period of instability was a direct consequence of Nero's despotic rule, where personal ambition overshadowed the needs of the empire. One of the most critical elements of Nero's reign was his relationship with the Senate, which gradually deteriorated as he grew more paranoid and increasingly indifferent to the political system. While early in his rule, Nero appeared to work with the Senate and seemed to embrace its traditional Roman values, his increasing disregard for these institutions led to catastrophic consequences. His arbitrary purges of senators and the elite further alienated him from the very institution that once supported the imperial structure. This estrangement set the stage for the rebellion that eventually overthrew him. Nero's brutal tactics in consolidating his power can be seen in his treatment of those who stood in his way. Whether it was the murder of his mother, Agrippina, his wife, Octavia, or his half-brother, Britannicus, Nero's paranoia knew no bounds. These murders, although shocking, were part of a larger pattern where Nero eliminated anyone he perceived as a threat to his authority. The pattern of violence continued throughout his reign, and many of his closest associates met untimely deaths due to his whims. The pervasive atmosphere of fear and mistrust in his court contributed to the collapse of the imperial authority during the later years of his reign. As a ruler, Nero was deeply invested in maintaining his image. His obsession with public performance was part of his attempt to redefine what it meant to be an emperor. The idea of the emperor as a benevolent and artistic figure became central to his self-identity. Yet, his lavish performances on the public stage only served to alienate him further from the Roman elite. In a society where power was synonymous with military strength, Nero's theatrical ambitions were seen as a grotesque mockery of the emperor's duties. His appearances in public performances, acting, singing, and playing the lyre, undermined the authority of the emperor. These public spectacles were part of his desperate bid to gain popularity, but instead, they made him a figure of ridicule. Nero's relationship with the military also played a pivotal role in his downfall. Initially, the military supported him due to his familial connection to the imperial family. However, as his rule continued, his neglect of military affairs and his reckless spending began to erode that support. Military leaders, once loyal to him, turned against him as they realized that Nero's reckless policies were damaging the empire's strength. The military's dissatisfaction was evident in the rise of various revolts during his reign, including the rebellion led by Vindex in Gaul and the later uprisings that contributed to Nero's demise. In his final days, Nero was isolated, a ruler with no allies, no support, and no way out. His once glorious imperial household had become a shadow of its former self. Nero's obsession with his own survival ultimately led him to take his own life. After the rebellion in the provinces spread and the Senate declared him a public enemy, Nero knew his time was up. In a moment of despair and paranoia, Nero took his own life with the help of his secretary, Epaphroditus. As his life ended, Rome breathed a sigh of relief, but the scars left by his reign would take much longer to heal. Nero's reign left an indelible mark on the Roman Empire. While he is often remembered as a tyrant and a madman, his rule also highlights the dangers of unchecked power and the corruption that comes with absolute authority. His name, forever tarnished by his actions, has become synonymous with cruelty and excess. However, in the years following his death, Nero's legacy would undergo a transformation. As the Roman Empire stabilized after his death, historians began to reevaluate Nero's place in history. His reign, once viewed through the lens of imperial madness, was reconsidered by some as a reflection of the complexity of leadership. Some scholars have suggested that Nero's policies, though flawed, were not entirely detrimental to Rome. His interest in public entertainment and the arts, for example, was not entirely without merit. Nero's involvement in building projects, such as the construction of the Domus Aurea, demonstrated his desire to leave a lasting mark on Rome. Yet, these actions were overshadowed by his descent into tyranny and his disregard for the welfare of his people. The political chaos that followed Nero's death demonstrated the profound impact his reign had on Rome's stability. After his demise, the Roman Empire faced a series of challenges in finding a suitable successor. His death marked the end of the Julio-Claudian dynasty, and the empire's struggle to find a competent ruler led to the rise of the Flavian dynasty under Vespasian. Vespasian's ascent to power helped restore order to the empire and marked the beginning of a new chapter in Roman history, one that would eventually lead to the consolidation of power under the so-called Five Good Emperors. Even in death, Nero continued to be a symbol of tyranny and excess. The Senate, eager to distance itself from his rule, ordered the destruction of his statues and erased his name from public monuments. Nero's memory was condemned, and his reign was relegated to the darkest chapters of Rome's imperial history. However, the intrigue surrounding his rule and the mystery of his death ensured that Nero would remain a figure of fascination for centuries to come. Today, Nero's reign serves as a cautionary tale. His life reminds us of the dangers of absolute power and the perils of a leader who becomes consumed by personal ambition. His actions, while extreme, reflect a universal truth: that the corrupting influence of power can destroy not just individuals, but entire civilizations. Nero's story, tragic and horrifying as it may be, remains an enduring part of the Roman Empire's legacy, a reminder of what happens when a ruler loses touch with humanity in pursuit of self-gratification. As we reflect on Nero's reign, we must ask ourselves, what lessons can we learn from his tragic downfall? How does his story resonate with the challenges of leadership and power today? History, after all, is not just a collection of dates and events, but a mirror reflecting the human condition. And in the case of Nero, that reflection is one of madness, cruelty, and the destructive potential of unchecked authority. Nero's reign, as disastrous as it was a stark lesson in the dangers of unchecked power, of an emperor who sought to impose his will on the entire empire without regard for the consequences. Yet, to truly understand the depth of his cruelty and madness, it is essential to explore the aftermath of his death and the lasting impact he had on Rome and the world. The destruction of Nero's statues, the erasure of his name from public records, and the condemnation of his reign by the Senate were all attempts to cleanse the empire of his influence. But in the centuries that followed, Nero's story became a myth, a legend, woven into the fabric of Roman history. His reign became synonymous with tyranny and decadence, the archetype of an emperor who fell victim to the temptations of absolute power. One of the most enduring aspects of Nero's legacy is the way in which he has been portrayed in various historical and literary works. From the earliest historians like Tacitus and Suetonius, who painted him as a madman consumed by paranoia and excess, to more modern interpretations, Nero's character has been defined by his cruelty and his desperate thirst for approval. He is often depicted as a ruler who destroyed everything in his path, from his family to his empire, in his quest for fame and glory. These portrayals, though based on historical events, have been sensationalized and have contributed to the enduring myth of Nero as a villain in the grand narrative of Roman history. However, as with many historical figures, there is more to Nero than the simplistic portrayal of a mad tyrant. While his reign was undoubtedly marked by cruelty, there were moments in his rule that reflected a more nuanced, complex character. For example, Nero's interest in the arts, while often viewed as self-indulgent and frivolous, was not without merit. He sought to transform Rome into a cultural hub, investing in public performances, games, and theatrical productions. Nero was known for his patronage of poets, musicians, and artists, and he even performed in public, something that was seen as beneath the dignity of an emperor. In a society that placed great importance on public spectacle, Nero's desire to be a performer was not entirely unprecedented, though it was certainly controversial. Nero's artistic ambitions, however, came at a great cost. His performances alienated the Roman elite, who saw his actions as a degradation of imperial dignity. The emperor, who sought to be both a ruler and an entertainer, created a schism between himself and the traditional power structures of Rome. The elite, who valued military prowess and political acumen above all else, could not reconcile the image of the emperor as an artist. This disconnect between Nero's self-image and the expectations of the Roman elite would contribute to his growing isolation and eventual downfall. The building projects that Nero initiated, such as the construction of the Domus Aurea, the Golden House, are another example of his ambitious but ultimately disastrous vision for Rome. While the palace itself was a marvel of architectural grandeur, it was also an emblem of Nero's excess. The Domus Aurea symbolized his desire to create an empire that reflected his personal tastes and desires, but it also highlighted the growing divide between the emperor and the people. The vast, opulent palace was built at the expense of the Roman populace, many of whom had been left homeless by the Great Fire of 64 AD. The emperor's callous disregard for the suffering of his citizens further fueled resentment against him. Despite these moments of excess, Nero's reign did not lack significant accomplishments in the realm of policy. He oversaw the expansion of the empire's borders, particularly in the east, where Rome's influence extended further into the territories of modern-day Armenia and the Parthian Empire. Nero's foreign policies, while often overshadowed by his personal excesses, helped solidify Rome's position as the dominant power in the ancient world. But for all his moments of brilliance, Nero's legacy is, for the most part, defined by his darker qualities. His cruelty, his paranoia, and his obsession with power led to the deaths of many, including his own family members. His disregard for Roman traditions and his alienation of the Senate and military ensured that his reign would be marked by instability and violence. Nero's violent purges and the execution of his perceived enemies further cemented his reputation as a tyrant. His actions also left a lasting mark on the Roman Empire, contributing to the internal instability that would plague the empire for years after his death. The downfall of Nero was inevitable, given the pattern of his rule. His increasing isolation from the political elite, his cruelty, and his growing unpopularity among the people of Rome made it impossible for him to maintain control. When rebellions broke out in the provinces, and the military turned against him, Nero had no choice but to flee the city. His final days were a tragic reflection of the ruler he had become. Alone and betrayed, he chose suicide as his only escape from the consequences of his actions. The death of Nero marked the end of an era and the beginning of a new chapter in Roman history. In the years that followed, the empire would experience a period of relative stability under the Flavian dynasty, which emerged from the chaos of Nero's death. The Flavians, particularly Vespasian and his sons Titus and Domitian, sought to restore order to an empire that had been left in ruins by Nero's reckless rule. The rebuilding of Rome and the consolidation of power under the Flavians served as a stark contrast to the disorder and madness that had characterized Nero's reign. The Flavian emperors were able to establish a sense of stability that had been lacking under Nero, and their rule would set the stage for the empire's continued dominance in the centuries to come. But despite the relative peace that followed his death, the legacy of Nero's cruelty and madness lived on. His name became synonymous with tyranny, and his reign would serve as a cautionary tale for future emperors. Nero's story is a reminder of the dangers of unchecked power, of a ruler who allowed his desires and insecurities to consume him, leading to the destruction of both his own life and the empire he ruled. His reign serves as a stark lesson in the dangers of hubris, of a leader who thought he could control everything, only to find that in the end, it was he who was consumed by the very power he sought to wield. As we reflect on the madness of Nero and the devastation he wrought upon the Roman Empire, we are reminded that the rise and fall of empires is often shaped by the character of those who lead them. Nero's reign stands as one of the most infamous chapters in the history of the Roman Empire, a story of ambition, excess, cruelty, and, ultimately, self-destruction. The madness of Nero teaches us a timeless lesson, that the abuse of power can destroy not just the individual, but entire civilizations. The consequences of Nero's reign continue to resonate today, reminding us that unchecked ambition, when combined with cruelty and indifference to the needs of others, can lead to the collapse of even the most powerful empires. In the end, Nero's reign remains one of the most tragic and captivating stories of power gone awry. His legacy is a complex tapestry of ambition, madness, and destruction, a reminder that history is often written by the actions of those who hold the reins of power. Though his life ended in disgrace, the lessons from Nero's rule continue to echo through time, teaching us the dangers of unchecked ambition and the destructive potential of those who forget their humanity in the pursuit of absolute control. Nero may have fallen, but his story remains a timeless warning for future generations. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to hear more dark, twisted tales from history.